Good morning, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next hour. Search for survivors continue in Nepal as thousands reported missing in deadly flash floods. Death toll nears 400 amid warning of fresh flood warnings. India extends humanitarian aid. India expresses readiness to initiate negotiations on bilateral investment treaty with Canada. Aims rupees 4.65 lakh crore trade by 2030. Iran preparing list of conditions for reopening Strait of Hormuz. Qatar steps in to mediate as Trump says U.S. not talking to Tehran. Amid escalating feud with Canada, Trump renames Lake Ontario as Lake America. Carney rejects the idea, defends centuries-old name. And Indian Grandmaster R. Praggnanandhaa creates history, becomes first Indian to win the Grand Chess Tour, defeats defending champion Fabiano Caruana. And we start the bulletin with the latest updates on the Nepal flash floods. As rescuers search for survivors in the debris-strewn valleys and hillsides of Nepal, while several people remain missing after a wall of ice, mud and rock collapsed into a mountain river, triggering a catastrophic flash flood. In the Trisuli region of Nuwakot district, there was extensive destruction, with buildings completely destroyed and vehicles submerged in silt. Police said 359 people had died, with dozens of bodies swept down into the plains from where they were being recovered. Nepal's Disaster Management Authority warned of potential new flood risk along the Bhotekoshi River after satellite images and preliminary analysis indicates the river had been blocked and a lake had formed at the site of Wednesday's flood. And DT India correspondent Tapush Bhattacharya joins us live from Kathmandu, Nepal for more. Tapush, can you give us the latest on the extent of the calamity in Nepal and rescue operations, and what are you learning about the risk of fresh floods?
Right, Shubhendu, good morning. And let me put first some figures for you. The death toll for the in this particular catastrophic Nepal-Tibet flood rose to 389. Yesterday evening, we were told, and the rescuers continue to search for people. There are three more people there are three casualties there on the Tibet side that China also confirmed, and the latest figures combining both have gone up to 392. And as per the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Authority, almost 910 people are missing, including 288 Indians. Right now, the Nepalese authorities are not giving a breakup of the nationalities who are missing, but we can say that the numbers are expected to go up further, and they're trying to figure out exactly how many people are currently missing. The latest figure says that it is 910. The rescuers are right now on the edge. We've been told that they believe that there will be a second flash floods that can occur, with the authorities stating that the people who are working on the rescue efforts have been told to be on the edge, told to be on the lookout, and if there's certain things happen, they have to be careful about that. Good news still coming in for Indian authorities. They've just said that 21 people were rescued yesterday. They also came out with a list of 63 people. So rescue efforts are going on. More than 40 tons of relief efforts were shipped. Yesterday, a second tranche of flight came with the rescue efforts. So rescue efforts is going on in full swing. Indian authorities are working in tandem with the Nepali authorities to make sure that at least the rescue efforts, along with the basic medicines and other essential items, are there on ground when the rescuers are undertaking such a huge effort to make sure that people are rescued from there.
Tapas, clearly in the aftermath of such a catastrophic disaster, the focus is on relief initiatives. A little more on how is India joining in the international effort in providing speedy aid and relief to people who are affected by this disaster?
As I put, Shubhendu, that almost 40 tons of essential commodities were lifted by Indian Air Force and its aircraft, and that's something very important. The most of the important part was the medicines that are important. So the medicines have been provided. Heavy equipment were also given to the Nepali authorities in their effort to provide the rescuers those essential tools for them to work on. So India and Nepal are working closely in tandem, especially with the people who are working on the ground, the disaster relief authorities that are working on the ground. They will be working with them, and hopefully we will get more good news coming in. But it's a race against time. It's a race to rescue those who have been stranded on places, especially in the Bhote-Kaushi river banks. In Nuwakot, we will be going to Nuwakot today, which was affected a lot. In fact, we were told that most of the bridges were swept aside. So the task is cut out for the authorities. A, they have to put the transport back in action. B, they have to get in. They have to work in close tandem with the authorities to put the communication line also working in those areas. We were told by certain people that Indian workers were also there working on the hydro project, were also stranded in certain areas, so they will also be have to be rescued by the authorities.
Tapas, thank you for joining us with those updates. Stay safe as you report from Nepal. Moving on, countries and organizations around the world have stepped up assistance to Nepal following devastating floods. From the European Union and the United States to the UK, Canada, WHO, Red Cross, international efforts are underway to support rescue and relief operations. Several tons of disaster relief supplies from India, including temporary shelters, food packets, medicines, have been rushed to the neighborhood.
Countries and organizations around the world have begun sending cash, relief supplies and other assistance to Nepal. Among others, European Union said it is ready to mobilize further European assistance. International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies said in a statement it is releasing $1.24 million in emergency funding to support the Nepal Red Cross Society's flood response. United States was sending a disaster response advisor to Nepal and providing funds worth $500,000. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney described the flooding as devastating, adding that Canadian officials were monitoring the situation closely and sending relief. World Health Organization (WHO) has dispatched essential emergency medical supplies, including medicines and multi-purpose tents. While UK Prime Minister Andy Burnham too offered search and rescue support alongside financial resources.
Yes, these are such distressing scenes coming out of Nepal, and we feel for the people there and everything that they're going through at this moment in time. Such devastation of communities and already, sadly it seems, such huge loss of life. In the past, Nepal has been there for Britain in our hour of need, and we will be there for Nepal in its hour of need.
While India has sent 10 metric tons of disaster relief supplies, including temporary shelters, blankets, hygiene kits, solar lamps, and medicines. From India, the second consignment of 37.5 tons of HADR material, medicines, and food packets was handed over to Mahabir Pun, Minister for Science, Technology and Innovation, to support Nepal's flood relief and rescue efforts.
Prime Minister yesterday spoke to the Prime Minister of Nepal, conveyed our deepest condolences, conveyed that India stands in solidarity with people of Nepal, as also offered all possible assistance, humanitarian assistance from our side. 2 aircraft with humanitarian assistance have been sent to Kathmandu. A C-130J aircraft took off yesterday at around 8:30 p.m. carrying 10 tons of relief. This morning, a C-17 aircraft departed with 37.5 tons of supplies, comprising 28.5 tons of relief items. In total, across the 2 departures by air, India has sent 47.5 tons of emergency relief.
Notably, more than 1,500 people, including more than 826 foreign nationals, are missing across Nepal, with tourists from more than 24 countries among those unaccounted for. Of the missing foreign nationals, 63 from the United States, 35 from Australia, 33 from Britain, 25 from Canada, 55 from Malaysia, and 53 from Ukraine. On Wednesday, a tsunami-like wall of water and mud swept through villages and towns along Nepal's Bhotekoshi and Trishuli rivers. Mohammad Afzarul Hassan's report for DD India.
The catastrophic flash floods in Nepal are likely caused by a huge chunk of glacier that broke off and crashed into the valley below. Visuals from the region show a tsunami-like wall of mud and debris surging down river valleys. More in this report.
In the shadow of the Himalayas, nature unleashed its fury. A massive wall of mud, ice and debris came crashing down through Nepal's Rasuwa district on Wednesday, sweeping away everything in its path. The disaster followed the collapse of a mass of ice from a glacier more than 5,000 meters above sea level.
Floods came in suddenly and exploded like a bomb. The river looked small from distance, but it suddenly started overflowing and swept through this place.
With the death toll expected to rise, Nepal has intensified search, rescue and relief operations. The army is conducting coordinated ground and air missions while distributing food, tents and medicines to affected communities. Relief efforts have now been stepped up. More than 40 charter helicopter flights took off from Kathmandu on Thursday, carrying essential supplies to flood-hit areas, including Rasuwa. The Nepal Army is coordinating the operation and overseeing the movement of relief material from collection centers to private helicopters. Initial reports suggested that an earthquake may have triggered the glacier collapse, but the U.S. Geological Survey said the tremor recorded at the time was caused by a massive collapse of rock and ice into the valley. Experts say water levels in the Trishuli River surged by as much as 9 meters in just 30 minutes.
There will be a hazard of things falling down, and the height of the flow is such that, in some cases it must be tens of meters up the sides of the hills. So, a couple of ton rock falling 10 meters is a hazard in itself, all the way down 60 kilometers. So the rescue effort is going to be just, a very difficult operation.
The Indian Embassy in Nepal has issued emergency contact numbers for Indian nationals affected by the flash floods. Those needing assistance or information can contact the embassy through these numbers. The disaster has also triggered a flood alert in India. Neighboring states Bihar and Uttar Pradesh have placed local administrations and NDRF teams on high alert. Authorities are closely monitoring river levels and evacuating vulnerable communities in flood-prone areas. Nepal's latest disaster is another stark warning from the Himalayas. The region is increasingly vulnerable to glacier-related disasters, glacial lake outbursts and flash floods. Nepal has more than 2,000 glacial lakes, with at least 21 considered potentially dangerous. Over the past 2 decades, the Himalayan region has witnessed repeated catastrophic events, underscoring the growing threat of a rapidly changing climate.
The Himalayas have once again shown us the devastating power of nature. As rescue operations continue in Nepal and flood alerts remain in places in India, The disaster is a stark reminder that climate-driven risks in the region are growing and preparedness can no longer wait. With camera person Vinod Doordarshan, this is Taposh Bhattacharya for DD India from Kathmandu, Nepal.
Still to come on DD India News Hour. India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal addresses investors and business roadshow in Osaka, Japan. Washington rejects Ottawa's decision to impose retaliatory tariffs. Stay tuned to know the story behind the trade war. And media reports say Trump administration is discussing taking stake in Venezuela oil. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. India has expressed its readiness to initiate negotiations on a bilateral investment treaty with Canada at the earliest, as Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and François-Philippe Champagne concluded the inaugural Canada-India Finance Ministers' Economic and Financial Dialogue and discussed ways to expand bilateral trade to 4.65 lakh crore rupees by 2030. As per the official joint statement released by India's Ministry of Finance, according to the statement, following the inaugural Canada-India Finance Ministers' dialogue, it focused on strengthening economic and financial cooperation between the two countries, including enhanced trade and investment. During the dialogue, the two ministers exchanged views on global macroeconomic developments and domestic policy priorities, and discussed the mutual benefits of strengthening bilateral economic and investment ties. The two sides also welcomed the growing investment relationship between India and Canada and recognized the role of long-term institutional capital in strengthening bilateral economic ties. According to Ministry of Finance release, the dialogue is aimed at strengthening cooperation in areas such as macroeconomic developments, financial sector, bilateral investment, and shared international economic priorities.
Discussions today centered around three broad categories or broad areas. The first one is a macroeconomic development which we have to assess for ourselves, and domestic policy priorities for both countries, each for its own. The second one is practical avenues for cooperation in the financial sector, including cross-border payments, financial stability, fintech, and capital markets. The third area, we explored opportunities for wider international and multilateral cooperation on issues of shared interests. This included areas such as critical minerals, cooperation on issues of shared interests.
India is the world's fastest growing major economy. I want to compliment you. The fourth largest economy in the world now. If you put it in a purchasing power parity, you would say that India is even higher in the ranking. So I just want to compliment you for the journey. Canada and India are uniquely complementary. Canada can provide energy security and food security to India. India can provide to Canada scale, talent, and technology. So I must say that this was a very, very fruitful morning in the launch of the dialogue.
Besides, India and Japan are giving fresh impetus to their special strategic and global partnership. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal's 4-day visit to Tokyo, Nagoya and Osaka saw wide-ranging talks with top Japanese leaders and industry captains, from investment and supply chain to next-gen mobility, healthcare and semiconductors. The visit underscores new opportunities to deepen cooperation across key sectors. DD India's Rahul Upadhyay has more.
The India-Japan Special Strategic and Global Partnership gained fresh momentum as Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal met with senior Japanese leaders during his 4-day visit to Tokyo, Nagoya, and Osaka. His meetings focused on accelerating Japanese investment in India, strengthening industrial partnerships, and building resilient supply chains. Minister Goyal addressed the Investors and Business Roadshow in Osaka, meeting over 100 Indian and 250 Japanese businesspersons and investors. Minister Goyal highlighted areas where the partnership can be strengthened further, including next-generation mobility and economic security, wellness and healthcare, and human capital.
Next generation mobility and economic security partnership. Your advancements in semiconductors and green hydrogen, in medtech, in agri-tech, and other areas can find significant scale in India.
In Tokyo, Piyush Goyal met Naofumi Takenaka, President and COO of Daikin Industries, to discuss expanding Daikin's manufacturing footprint in India's air conditioning sector. He also met President and CEO of Omron Corporation, holding productive talks on collaboration in automation, digital solutions, and medical devices. In Osaka, Minister Piyush Goyal met Akito Mizuno, President of Mizuno Corporation, to explore investment in sports gear, sportswear, and footwear, aimed at boosting India's global competitiveness in sports. He also met Yuichiro Wakatsuki, co-president of Nippon Paint Holdings, discussing opportunities to strengthen cooperation in paints and coatings industry, supported by India's expanding manufacturing and infrastructure landscape. Piyush Goyal met Takaki Yamamoto, chairman of Daiki Aluminium, to discuss collaboration in aluminium manufacturing and allied industries. He also met Katsumi Azuma, President and CEO of ROHM Company Limited, leading talks on deepening cooperation in semiconductors and electronics components manufacturing, with India's electronics ecosystem offering significant scope for investment. Minister Piyush Goyal also chaired sector-specific roundtables on capital goods, automotive, semiconductors, AI, startups, and foreign institutional investors. Rahul Upadhyay's report for DD India.
The trade confrontation between Canada and the United States is intensifying, with Washington now formally rejecting Ottawa's decision to impose retaliatory tariffs on American products. Canada's measures, covering nearly $20 billion in imports, will take effect on September 8th. Tarun Paul Singh reports.
The Canada-United States trade dispute is hardening, with neither side currently signaling an immediate return to negotiations. Canada has announced counter tariffs on 27.6 billion Canadian dollars, or approximately $20 billion worth of American imports. Beginning September 8, duties of 15, 25 and 50% will be imposed on more than 700 categories of US-made products. The highest tariff of 50% will apply to American steels, aluminium, furniture, clothing and apparel, appliances, dairy products including cheese, fish, seafood, and certain steel, aluminium derivatives will face a 25% tariff. Selected electronics and tools will face duties of 15%. Canada's existing counter tariffs on American automobiles will also remain in place. Ottawa says the measure will match the latest American tariff dollar for dollar and rate for rate. The retaliation followed the United States imposing 50% tariff on approximately 27.6 billion Canadian dollars worth of goods on August 22, after negotiation between the two countries collapsed. Canada maintains that Washington introduced last-minute demands that were unfair, economically damaging, and inconsistent with Canada's sovereignty. The White House has now formally rejected the explanation. It has accused Canada of choosing retaliation over negotiation and defended the American tariffs by pointing to Canadian restrictions involving automobiles, dairy products, and American alcoholic beverages. President Donald Trump has also threatened to raise tariffs on all Canadian cars, trucks, and automotive parts to 50% from January 2027. Such a move could disrupt the deeply integrated North American automobile industry. To protect business and workers, the Canadian government has announced a supporting package worth 7.5 billion Canadian dollars or approximately 5.4 billion US dollars. The package includes liquidity support for businesses, employment insurance, flexibility, workplace training, job retaining programs, and assistance for tariff-affected industries. There are also indications that Canada is preparing for prolonged confrontation. Manitoba Premier says discussions with Prime Minister Mark Carney have focused on creating economic programs capable of supporting Canadians for more than 2 years. Provincial governments are also reaching out directly to American states and preparing their own assistance measures. From Canada, this is Tarun Paul Singh.
Indeed, India correspondent Akhilesh Suman joins us for more updates from Delhi. Akhilesh, they say what's in the name. First, how do you decode President Trump's attempt at changing the name of Lake Ontario?
Actually, there are so many things in the name, and the name is a way of dominating over the person or the country on whose name you are trying to change. So, Lake of Ontario has been very important, lake between U.S. and Canada. It is quite a big lake, and it is also gives importance because of its variety of uses, water uses, trade uses, and also the identity uses. The Lake of Ontario was named because U.S. and Canada both agreed to it, and in a way U.S. gave importance to Canada. But now with Donald Trump renaming it as Lake of America shows that Donald Trump wants that Canada should obey what Canada should obey what U.S. wants. And that is a symbolic gesture. It will not change the whole any of the economic implications, or it will not change any of the trade related to Lake of Ontario, but it will just show that Donald Trump wants his own way, and there is nothing more in that, but just that to show that Donald Trump is the supreme. Donald Trump is the leader of both Canada and USA, and we have seen that when Donald Trump came to be the president for the second time, he said that Canada should be the 51st state of right. USA. So that I think that tendency is continuing, and after naming Lake of Ontario as Lake of America, it seems that the same psychology works.
Okay, Akhilesh, let's talk about the issue where the real money is. If you could simplify for us the implications of the escalating trade war between the two neighbors, and who will end up paying more?
Both will have to pay more, because in trade war no party wins. If US thinks that it will win more, I think that is wrong. Because U.S., Canada, and Mexico has been a triangle of trade between the three nations, and one part of any manufacturing, especially in automobile and many others, is made in Canada. It goes to U.S. and some parts are coming from Mexico. So this situation will be affected because of this. Whether Donald Trump's this 50% imposition of tariff, and then again Canada's imposition of tariff of 50%, it will apply to those things also. It is interesting to see that till now the things that both countries, people of both countries, Canada and US, both will have to pay more prices for any goods that are built either in USA or in Canada. So in trade war there is no winner. It is just the ego that fights between the two nations, and this is how Donald Trump has imposed his own ego and Canada has to say that enough is enough. We will also impose, because in countries sovereignty is the supreme thing, and any leader of any country has to show that it also respects the sovereignty of the country. So I think that Mark Carney is forced to impose 50% 50% tariff because the US imposed 50% tariff. So this is the fight between two sovereignties, not sovereign nations, but it is fight between two sovereignties. The feeling of sovereignty that is, being somehow or other affected by Donald Trump's some statements off and on.
There, Akhilesh, thank you for joining us with those inputs and insights. Still to come on DD India News Hour. 12 years of PM Jan Dhan Yojana powering India's financial revolution. Amarnath Yatra formally concludes today with Chari Mubarak reaching the holy cave for the traditional final rituals. And the nation is celebrating Raksha Bandhan, a cherished Indian festival honoring the sacred bonds of love, purity and protection.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. In more international updates, Iran is preparing a list of conditions for reopening the Strait of Hormuz after mediators asked Tehran to set them out, adding that ending the regional war was among them. Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Mohsen Rezai, said Tehran had agreed with Oman on a shipping corridor through the strait with parts of the route in Omani waters and parts in Iranian waters. Ships would use a designated central channel if the U.S. met Iran's conditions. Before the war began in February, the strait carried roughly 1/5 of global oil and liquefied natural gas shipments. Shipping through the waterway has largely stopped since then. Ceasefire agreements announced by Washington and Tehran in April and June were intended to restore maritime traffic, but it did not hold. Meanwhile, Qatar's Prime Minister visited Tehran on Thursday in an effort to revive stalled diplomacy 6 months into the war. As U.S. President Trump said, Washington was not currently talking to Iran. In Tehran, Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani urged a return to diplomacy during talks with Iran's top negotiator Mohammad Bakar Kalibaf on Thursday. Iran in turn called on regional neighbors to prevent the United States from using their territory to carry out military or economic attacks on Iran. In other news, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met Moldovan President Maia Sandu in Chisinau as Moldova marked its Independence Day. The two leaders discussed closer cooperation on security, energy and infrastructure. The meeting came hours after major Russian missile and drone attack on Ukraine. Moldova says 5 Russian drones crossed into its airspace during the overnight assault. One of the drones was later found on Moldovan territory. The airspace violations have raised fresh security concerns in the country. Zelensky also backed Moldova's bid to join the European Union. He said he hoped Ukraine and Moldova would eventually become members of the bloc together. The two countries have been strengthening ties as Russia's war in Ukraine continues to pose wider security risks across the region. Russia has warned it could strike British military targets inside and outside Ukraine in response to Ukrainian strikes using British-made missiles. The warning came from Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova in Moscow. She said Russian forces could target British military installations and equipment in Ukraine and beyond its borders. The threat follows Britain's decision to give Kiev access to classified technology to produce Storm Shadow cruise missiles in Ukraine. The Kremlin has accused Britain of adding fuel to fire by supporting the move. Zakharova also warned France, which has approved the licensing of missile technology. Meanwhile, Britain rejected the warning. The Ministry of Defence said London stood shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine and remained committed to providing weapons to defend against Russia's invasion. The latest threat comes amid growing attacks using Western-supplied long-range weapons, raising fears of a wider escalation between Russia and NATO-backed Ukraine. Ukraine says Russian and Ukrainian delegations could meet again in September for talks aimed at ending the conflict, although Moscow says it has no information on any new meeting. Head of Ukraine's presidential office, Kyrylo, said negotiators are currently on hold but could resume next month. He said U.S. representatives are also likely to join the possible talks, but the Kremlin says no date or specific plan has been agreed. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Moscow has no information on timing of another round of Russia-Ukraine negotiations. He added Russia remains open to peace talks and continues working-level contacts with Washington on the conflict. Russia, Ukraine and the United States have already held 3 rounds of talks this year. 2 rounds took place in Abu Dhabi, followed by negotiations in Geneva. Those talks were suspended after the Geneva meeting. U.S. President Donald Trump has said Russian President Vladimir Putin will not attack a NATO country. Trump said there would be no Russian attack on NATO territory. Trump also dismissed reports that Ratcliffe had traveled to Moscow earlier this week to deliver a warning to Russia. He said the CIA chief regularly meets his Russian counterpart and there was nothing unusual about the visit.
Putin agreed or committed to not attacking a NATO territory.
I've had good talks with him. He's not going to be attacking a NATO territory.
You punish Putin or Russia if they continue.
Well, it depends. So far, I think Russia's behaved quite well, having to do with the Strait of Hormuz. And you have to understand, for everything they do, we do also. You know, somebody was saying about China. What about China? We hear they're spying. We spy on them too. That's the way it goes.
President Trump has ordered Lake Ontario to be renamed Lake America as he escalated his trade war with Canada, sparking immediate pushback from Ottawa. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney rejected the change, insisting that Canadians will continue to call it Lake Ontario, emphasizing its long Indigenous and historical roots. The proposed renaming sparked reactions across Canada, with several citizens and political leaders dismissing the move. The volatile U.S. leaders' move comes after U.S. Canada trade talks collapsed last week, prompting the 2 longtime allies to slap tit-for-tat tariffs on each other.
Finally, I guess the purpose of this more than anything else is we're going to be changing the name of Lake Ontario, effective immediately, to Lake America. That's going to take place right now as I signed the order, and we filed all the necessary papers, documents, everything else. We notified all of the various people that we have to notify. So we've done everything that you have to do, and this is official, effective immediately.
United States has offered assistance to Nepal following the devastating flash flood. President Trump said an estimated 50 to 60 Americans may have been in the affected area, but their whereabouts and condition had not yet been confirmed.
Oh, it's terrible. No, and we've called Nepal and we've offered any help that they need. You know, have a very good relationship with Nepal, and that was a brutal, that wasn't just, that was mud and water as a mixture. Nobody's ever seen anything quite like that. We're very powerful, strong, you know, strong, well-built buildings were wiped out like they were toothpicks. That's a terrible thing. No, we are sending aid. And we've spoken to the leadership and we let them know anything they want we'll have. And there were 50, maybe 60 Americans over there. We haven't gotten the full list yet, but hopefully they're okay.
In other news, President Donald Trump's administration is in talks with Venezuela's interim government about the United States taking an ownership stake in the South American country's vast oil resources. The discussions involve more than a dozen productive oil fields with 90 billion barrels of proven reserves. about a third of Venezuela's total proven reserves of 300 billion barrels. In return for a U.S. ownership stake, private companies, including American firms, would develop the fields and return more oil revenue to Venezuela. U.S. companies remain cautious about investing in Venezuela due to poor infrastructure and past asset seizures. Despite Trump administration's efforts to attract investment, Chevron, the only American oil company that was still operating in Venezuela when Maduro was ousted, said it plans to significantly increase its Venezuelan oil production by the year 2028. A U.S. federal judge has ruled that sanctions imposed by President Trump administration against artificial intelligence company Anthropic were illegal. Judge Rita Lynn said the government cannot use national security claims to punish a company for criticizing its policies. The court overturned Anthropic's designation as a supply chain risk and blocked federal agencies from enforcing restrictions on the company's Claude AI models. The dispute began after Anthropic refused to allow its AI technology to be used for fully autonomous lethal weapons or mass surveillance of Americans. Campaigners for and against restarting Iceland's EU membership talk held rallies in Reykjavik on Thursday. Ahead of Saturday's referendum, supporters of both sides of Iceland's upcoming EU referendum held rallies urging voters to back their campaigns. The referendum will decide whether negotiations with Brussels should resume, not whether Iceland joins the EU. A recent Maskina poll shows 51.3% backing renewed talks against 48.7% opposed. Iceland halted EU negotiations in 2013, but economic pressures and regional security concerns have revived interest. Attorney Strigda Maria Alisdottir said Iceland's best interest is to remain outside the EU.
What I hope for is that the nation will see that Iceland's best interest is to remain where it is today and to not join the EU. The EEA has been a tremendous benefit for Iceland.
While former Prime Minister Katrín Jakobsdóttir said she intends to vote no, favouring close cooperation to the European Economic Area.
I was informing the crowd here that I intend to say no because I think Iceland is better off outside of the EU, but in close collaboration with the EU through the EEA agreement. That has been a very successful collaboration. I think for a country like ours, with our small economy, it's very important to maintain to our sovereignty and not to transfer more power than we would have to do to the EU.
Moving on, Cuba is set to kick off the school year for nearly 1.4 million children and adolescents, despite a fuel, transportation and electricity crisis that has wreaked havoc across all walks of life on the island. The crisis has worsened since June, when students were released early as transport and power supplies faltered amid tougher U.S. sanctions under President Donald Trump. Teacher shortages have left coverage at just 73%, while shortages of uniforms and frequent blackouts have added to the strain. To keep schools running, the government plans to recruit university students, professionals and retired teachers while allowing children to attend in comfortable clothes when uniforms are unavailable. French presidential candidates took place in their first debate on Thursday, sparring over the country's difficult financial situation ahead of the 2027 elections. The debate grew tense as candidates clashed over controversial plans for debt and pensions. France has struggled to control its finances since the pandemic, leaving it with high deficit and debt equal to 117% of its GDP. Polls show Le Pen leading the first round and as a strong contender for runoff, the Mélenchon and Edouard Philippe seen as possible rivals. South Korea, the United States and Japan will hold joint military exercise in September, focusing on countering North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. The 5-day Freedom Edge drill will take place from September 7th to 11th in international waters around South Korea's Jeju Island. Will include maritime missile defense, air operations, anti-submarine warfare and cyber defense training. The announcement comes after U.S. scaled back its annual military drills with South Korea in an effort to encourage dialogue with North. The Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana stands as one of the world's largest financial inclusion initiatives, guided by the triple mandate of banking the unbanked, securing the unsecured, and funding the unfunded. The scheme has fundamentally reshaped India's economic architecture. Total deposits under the scheme have crossed Rs 3.11 lakh crore, driven by steady rural adoption and financial independence. Here's more. PM Jan Dhan Yojana, announced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on 15th August 2014 and officially launched on 28th August 2014, has turned 12 years old. For routing direct benefit transfer payments from the government to beneficiary, the Yojana has been the foundation stone for Modi government's people-centric economic initiatives. The numbers driving India's financial revolution tell that the scheme has been a huge success story. More than 58.97 crore bank accounts have been opened under Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana till August of 2026. Of these, more than 80% of accounts belong to rural and semi-urban beneficiaries, taking banking directly to the grassroots. Of the total accounts, more than 32.79 crore, well over half, are held by women. Cumulative deposits have crossed 3 lakh crore rupees, with average household balances quadrupling since inception, and with over 41 crore RuPay cards issued. Jan Dhan continues to power the nation's digital payments engine. So what makes PM Jan Dhan Yojana truly stand out? It rests on 4 key pillars. First, zero balance accounts. No minimum balance is required, which means the doors of banking are now open to even the poorest households without any barrier to entry. Second, a free RuPay card, and it comes with a built-in accidental insurance cover of 2 lakh rupees. Third, the overdraft facility. Eligible account holders can access an overdraft of up to 10,000 rupees. Think of it as a microcredit safety net there when emergencies strike. And finally, the JAM Trinity engine. This is where it all comes together. By linking Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile numbers, India built the backbone of its direct benefit transfer system, ensuring government subsidies reach the right people directly with zero leakage. The Finance Ministry is aiming for panchayat-level campaigns targeting unbanked adults and migrant workers for 100% coverage. Banks are also leaving no stone unturned and are pushing to streamline re-KYC and update nominee details to keep accounts active and transaction ready. Accounts now bridge directly to Social Security, opening seamless access to Jeevan Jyoti life insurance, Suraksha accidental cover, and Atal pension plans. Sameer Dikshit's report for DD India. The Amarnath Yatra formally concludes today with Chari Mubarak reaching the holy cave for traditional final rituals. More than 4.8 lakh pilgrims had performed darshan before regular pilgrim movement was suspended on August 9th due to heavy rains and damage to the tracks. Chari Mubarak will now return via Panchtarni, Sheshnag and Chandanwari, with concluding rituals expected at Pahalgam around August 30th. The 12-day Sri Buddha Amarnath Yatra in Punch also concludes today. And a sacred thread that binds hearts, Raksha Bandhan 2026 is being celebrated across India, and traditional fervour and emotional warmth around. From homes to temples, the festival brings alive the timeless bond of love, protection and cherished memories between siblings. A special report by DD India correspondent Tripti Tripathi.
In India, festivals are more than celebrations. They are stories etched into the heart of every family. Stories of love, of traditions, of bonds that time can never break. And among these cherished traditions is Raksha Bandhan, a festival that celebrates one of life's most beautiful relationships, the unbreakable bond between a brother and a sister. On the full moon of Shravan, families come together as sisters tie the sacred Rakhi around their brother's wrist, a simple thread carrying a world of emotions. And in return, brothers make a promise to stand beside their sisters through every joy, every challenge, and every chapter of life. This Raksha Bandhan, sending that special thread of love to a brother, has become more colorful and convenient, thanks to a special initiative by the Indian Postal Department. The department introduced a Rakhi gift box with colorful contents and festive packaging. The box includes 2 special Rakhis, Akshat Kumkum, a badge, a fridge magnet, a keychain, and 3 pictures postcards. In a heartful gesture, students from across the nation made special Rakhis for soldiers. The students prepared colorful Rakhis to honor the armed forces who protect our borders. The initiative by the young students highlights the strong emotional bond between the people and soldiers. Raksha Bandhan is also an opportunity to go vocal for local. Handmade Rakhis are not just symbols of affection, but also threads of empowerment supporting thousands of local artisans, especially women, as their craft sustains both tradition and livelihood. A thread on the wrist, a promise in the heart. This is the timeless story of Raksha Bandhan. Tripti Tripachi's report, DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for all the action from sports. Indian Grandmaster R. Praggnanandhaa has created history by becoming the first Indian to win the Grand Chess Tour. Praggnanandhaa defeated defending champion Fabiano Caruana in a thrilling final after making a remarkable comeback. He started the final day 6 points behind Caruana, trailing 3-9 after the classical games. But Praggnanandhaa bounced back strongly in rapid section, winning both games and taking an 11-9 lead. The first blitz game ended in a draw after both players missed chances. The match went down to the wire, but Praggnanandhaa held his nerve to claim the historic title. The draw for the 2026-27 UEFA Champions League phase has set up several mouth-watering clashes. The draw took place at the Grimaldi Forum in Monaco, with 36 teams discovering their 8 opponents. Defending champions Paris Saint-Germain face Barcelona and Manchester City, while Real Madrid will take on Arsenal and Inter Milan. Manchester United, returning to the Champions League after 2 seasons, have been drawn against Bayern Munich and Atletico Madrid. Arsenal also face Bayern Munich, while Liverpool will meet Atletico Madrid and Inter Milan. Manchester City have another blockbuster fixture against Barcelona, apart from their clash with PSG. And DD India correspondent Narayan Singh joins us live from Delhi with more. Narayan, take us through what kind of contest are we looking at in the UEFA Champions League this time?
Shubhendu, if you take a look, the draw is out, and we know that it's a different format. It has been started in 2024-25 season, first time the new format of the Champions League. So it's the third season where we are seeing the 36 teams in a single league phase, and it's going to be a cracker of the contest in the league phase itself, because if we take a look, the 2-time winners Paris Saint-Germain will face in the first league phase only the strong English teams like Man City, and they also face Aston Villa, but their key contest we will see against the Spanish giant and the 5-time winner Barcelona. And talking about the Premier League champions Arsenal, they will host Real Madrid, the 15-time Champions League winner, at the Emirates, and also they have handed a trip to the Bayern Munich. So in the group stage, in the league stage only, we are seeing the exciting and mouth-watering clash. If you compare it with the previous format, where we used to see 32 teams instead of the 36 teams, where the 32 teams were divided into 8 groups, and each group containing 4 teams where we used to see tough matches. We can say that 2 or 3 tough matches in the group stage, because only there was a single group of that. And the UEFA, in order to make it more relevant, to make it more exciting, this new format was introduced 2 years back, and now we are seeing the big marquee clashes in the group stage, also in the league stage only. If you talk about here, the most important thing is that the top 8 teams finishing the top 8 positions will directly qualify for the round of 16, and teams from the 9th place to the 24th, they will play a 2-leg playoff, and the team winning will join the 8 teams for the round of 16, and the remaining 8 teams will go to the Europa Leagues, and team finishing below 25 will be knocked out from every competition. So all in all, we can say that it's a good thing for the US. They are getting exciting matches, and also UEFA generating a lot of revenue from the heavyweight clashes in the initial phases only. And talking about the exciting match, things that Manchester United, one of the most sought after club in the Europe, is also returning to the fold of the Champions League after 2 years, and we will see more exciting matches. And only Liverpool, I think, got some easy matches. They will face Atletico Madrid, Club Brugge and Inter Milan, but all in all, we can say that no match is an easy match here at the stage of the UEFA Champions League.
All right, Narayan, appreciate you joining us with those inputs. And that's all in this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. You can scan this QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.
Jharkhand will mesmerize you.